Hey there, fellow citizen of the internet. Welcome to the Moses Kabandana Podcast. Today I have with me Ben, and we're going to be talking about aligning childhood passions with career slash professional life. Ben, welcome to the Moses Kabandana Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
How would you describe your career right now as far as like helping people navigate this whole professional world? Like, what kind of career is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's taken me 25 years of wandering and meandering to get here, and
Mm.
I guess that's a good place for me to start is with my own sort of backstory and how I got to a place where I'm able to now be an advocate for candidates and help people achieve their own dream job. So for me, it started when I was a young kid. I grew up in the city of Chicago. I was surrounded by sort of all the resources that were available to me. And at the time, a lot of TV shows and a lot of movies were made in Chicago. And so I had this sense that I wanted to be in TV or radio or in the media or something, right? My childhood passion was I wanted to be a disc jockey, to be honest. I really just wanted to spin records and be on the radio. And I got through high school. I went into the military and ended up going to college at the University of New Mexico, where I had an opportunity to work for our college radio station, which was also a National Public Radio affiliate station. So it was a very professional environment, but with a lot of learning opportunities. And that led me into getting my degree in communications. And I worked at the radio station and I graduated and I got a job working at the commercial radio station in town. And that was great. It was a lot of fun. I was in the business for about 8 years and I felt like, wow, I'm doing it, right? Like I had this passion. I'm following my dream. I'm doing my thing. But then sort of life came at me, right? I got married. I wanted to buy a house. I started a family. I was watching my friends do other things and they were making more money. And I was pretty frustrated and I guess I got distracted and I was lured away, whatever you want to call it, right? The shiny object caught my attention and I just started chasing dollars. I started looking for jobs that paid more money. I went into sales. I worked for mortgage companies. I worked for dry cleaners. I did about everything you could imagine. And I got to a point where, I couldn't do it anymore. And I started calling through my network and a guy that I had done some business with in the past said, why don't you come work for me? And I was like, that's great. What exactly do you do? And when do I start? Right. It was kind of just another job and a string of jobs. Right. And
Mm.
that's how I got introduced to talent acquisition and recruiting and all of that. So that was about 15 years ago. Um, to be honest, I didn't even know what a recruiter was. I didn't know, like when you're a kid, you want to play cops and robbers. Nobody's like, well, I'll be the recruiter. Like, that's not a thing, right? So I didn't
Mm.
even know. And for a while, I would tell people I was a recruiter and they would say, like, in the army. And so nobody really seemed to know what a recruiter is, right?
Mm.
And
Mm.
I was able to justify that I was doing good work. It was noble that I was helping people find jobs. And that was great. And I started to build a community and started to get some traction and whatever, started building my LinkedIn profile, following all of the advice that everybody always gives. And people started coming to me saying, I hate my job. I hate my life. I hate my kids. What am I going to do? Right. And at first I thought, why are you coming to me? Like, I'm not a psychologist or whatever,
Yeah.
but I told them, you got to find that thing that you really love. You got to find your passion and then apply your skills to that thing. I did that for a number of years. I watched a lot of my friends sort of change the trajectory of their lives again. And I was still feeling very good about my own career path at that point in time. And then
Mm.
COVID happened and I got laid off and I found another job and
Mm.
then I got laid off again and then I found another job and I was just done. I told my wife, I said, that's it. I'm done. I don't want to be a recruiter. I never wanted to be a recruiter. This was never like in my life plan. And she
Yeah.
said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to go get my commercial driver's license. I'm going to drive a truck. I mean, For real. I'm just going to just travel the country. You can come with if you want or not. I don't care. I'm just going to drive a truck. And she was like, great. You have my unwavering support. I think that's a great plan. But before you do that, maybe you should drink some of your own Kool-Aid, follow your own advice. And, it was a head scratcher. So I started
Mm.
looking specifically for talent acquisition jobs inside radio and media companies, entertainment companies. And I was being very selective, and I was unemployed for a good amount of time. And I eventually did land a job working for American Public Media Group, which owns Minnesota Public Radio and American Public Media. They own Southern California Public Radio and some other entities as well. And so for me, that was the culmination of my own advice coming to fruition, where I was able to apply my skills as a recruiter to the business of radio. And I found that being a recruiter, while it was painful and I kind of hated it, all of a sudden was fun and it was easy and I was really enjoying it. I got re-inspired. And then opportunities came to voice over underwriting and advertising type stuff, or to be a voice on one of the shows, to be, one of the characters for like a kids program or what have you. And so there were opportunities to be on the radio, right, without having to be a disc jockey or what have you.
Mm.
And that was going really well. My boss was very supportive. She encouraged me to start doing the podcast of my own. So I do have a podcast called The Dream Job Equation, which is the catalyst for my entire future. And while I worked there, I had access to tools and resources and things that really gave me sort of a leg up, I will say. Then I found myself recently laid off again. And I thought, am I going to continue to follow my own dream and redefine what my dream job is, and recognize that maybe it wasn't to be in radio at all? Maybe it's really to be able to be reminded that we all have tools to be able to create a show. So I can create a show. I can be creative. I can do all of the things that I wanted to do when I was a kid, and I can do it professionally. And now, because I have the skills as a recruiter and I understand the whole job market and I understand employers and all of that, I can shift my focus to being truly an advocate for individuals and not just trying to fill a job, right? So, for example, when as a recruiter, you have a job order, you need to hire an XYZ person, right? You might get 50 or 100 applicants or what have you. You screen through those applicants, you pick out 8 or 10 that you like. You're going to talk to those. Of those 8 or 10, maybe 5 move on to the hiring manager. Of those 5, eventually you hire 1, right? And all the rest of the candidates, more often than not, get little to no feedback. And if they do get feedback, it's usually very canned and generic because, the companies are worried about liability and all of that. So they don't want to share too much, right? So candidates are left lurking, wondering what's going on. Like, I have no idea. What did I do wrong? What could I have done better? Why is my resume not getting through? All of those kinds of things. So for me to be able to now work with individuals who don't understand why they can't get through the processes, or why they're not able to crush the interviews, or why they're not able to negotiate higher salaries, I can now help them on a one-on-one individual basis, regardless of what career path you're on or what your end goal destination is. I'm not trying to put you into a job that I'm trying to fill so that I can get paid. I'm trying to put you into a job so that you can get paid. And at the same time, I charge a fair fee for the services, and I offer essentially some free services along the way, and trying to make it accessible and affordable to as many people as I can.
Thank you for that umbrella
Yeah.
that you covered there. Wow, that is quite a journey. It's quite a journey, huh? So you've by starting your own podcast, you've essentially come full circle to what you wanted to do as a kid, right? And so it makes sense that you would try to help others fulfill their childhood passions, but now they are adults. So the question that comes to mind right away is what is one of the biggest barriers that people face when they're even entertaining the possibility of pursuing the passion that they had when they were little? Because my assumption here is that many of us consciously or subconsciously have killed that passion and suppressed that passion for so long that we have always associated that passion with just that's just for kids, or it's too impractical. But given that you're in the trenches, so to speak, on a day-to-day, helping people go back to their childhood and try to fulfill this passion, what do you think is the barrier that most people are running into?
If I had to distill it down to one word, I would say fear. So part of the
Okay.
story that I have lived, I didn't tell, is that people might think, okay, yeah, that sounds all well and good, right? But um, raise your hand if it took you more than 4 years to graduate from high school. Okay. Um, Raise your hand if you ever found yourself with less than $1,000 in the bank, right? So I like
Okay.
I have been one paycheck away from homeless. I've been 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. I literally was $200,000 in debt, and the only thing I had was a job. Like I had nothing. I had no money in the bank, no retirement, no nothing. And in that time, that was about when I hit bottom, and I started thinking about all of my own life journeys and decisions I made and how I got there. And now, I never would have imagined then that here 10 or 12 years later that I would be in the situation that I'm in today. But it takes a lot of intention. You have to be very, very, very focused. You have to truly want the thing that you're chasing, whatever it is. And I forget which book it is, but as an author wrote a book about businesses, and they said, if you want to know what's important to a business, show me their budget. And I think that's true about our personal lives too, right? If you said, I don't know, I want to go buy a new set of golf clubs. Well, if you
Mm.
really, really wanted a new set of golf clubs, you go buy a new set of golf clubs, right? But if you just say that because like you don't really like the golf clubs you have, but I mean, let's be honest, like, are you going to spend $1,500 on a new set of golf clubs or whatever? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of other things you might spend $1,500 on before you do that. And
Yeah.
so then you understand, okay, new set of golf clubs may be lower priority, right? So for my wife and I, it really started with trying to listen to what old people, I know this sounds counterintuitive, but what did old people, end of life, people who are like in hospice, what are their regrets? What are the things that old people regret? And I've never heard of a story where somebody said, "Oh, I should have put in more overtime," or "Oh man, if
Mm.
only I had
Mm.
worked on Saturdays." Nobody says that. People say
Yeah.
things like, "I wish I had spent more time with my kids. I wish I had done more traveling. I wish I had taken more risks. I should have started my own business." Right? People don't regret not like their job. Like that's not
Mm. Mm.
a thing. And so for my wife and I, it really put into focus, well, let's figure out if those are the things that people regret, then let's not regret those things. And we put together a very intense plan, and we got ourselves out of debt, and we started saving money. We bought a house and all of the things, right? And
Yeah.
it's not easy. I'll say, like this whole process of transforming your life and going from wherever you are today to wherever you want to go, it takes work. And I think the thing that most people run into is that they're afraid that they're going to fail. And a lot of that just comes from societal pressures, right? Human nature, I think, is externally, we tell people that we want them to be successful. Like, oh yeah, I love it when people are successful. I love seeing that. But the reality is that once somebody pops out of their stratus, everybody in their previous stratus starts grabbing at their waistbands and pulling them back down, right? So like if
Mm.
you started in middle class and all of a sudden you hit the lottery and now you're in the upper class, Well, the upper class people are like, not so much, like hold your horses. But the middle class people are like, well, you're still who you are. Don't forget where you
Yeah.
came from, right? And
Mm,
so
mm,
there's all of these pressures that keep us grounded. You mentioned kids, right? If you have young kids and, well, maybe you've been in sales and you make $200,000 a year, but you hate your job. But okay, but if you're going to take a transition, you're going to only make $100,000 a year. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, if you're making that kind of money, then you should be able to come up with a financial plan to pull that off, right? It requires that you have support from your spouse, from your parents, from your family, from your friends, right? It requires a lot of soul searching and looking at the
mm, mm,
mirror. It takes a lot of I'll say getting over yourself. Like a lot of times I feel like I'm pretty good at writing down my goals, and I have a long-term goal. I won't share the goal, but one of the things I do is I put sort of the things that are pros and cons, right? The things that are working
mm,
for me and the things that are working against me. And the thing that for my long-term goal, the thing that I put that's working for me is that the only thing in my way is me. And the thing that's working against me is that I might be in my way.
mm,
And
mm,
so
mm.
as long as I'm constantly reminding myself that that little voice in my head that's telling me, no, you're not able to, you're not smart enough, you're not educated enough, you didn't do the thing, you don't have the credential, whatever noise. I
Mm,
I
mm,
do have whatever it is. It's just noise, and you just have to persevere through that. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. A lot of people will start on this journey and find that their spouse is not on board, and so then all of a sudden they're making progress, and then they get resistance at home. So it becomes really easy to settle back into whatever's comfortable, right? And
mm,
that's I think that's a common thing for people when you're just trying to do new things in any circumstance. But when it
right,
comes to
right.
your career, that has such a huge impact on your entire life, and in many ways how we define ourselves. And um, when you ask people a simple question like who are you, 9 times out of 10 people start talking about what they do for a living.
Right.
And who you are and what you do are not necessarily the same thing, but we identify the work as our output. That's our life product. And
Mm,
so
mm.
we equate
Okay.
those things. So that's
Yeah.
why career is so important. And if you're just drudging along into a job, you're going to die young. I mean, I guess that's what it's going to come down to. You're going to have a heart attack at 50 or whatever. So, hopefully that's not not everybody's story. I hope it's not
Yeah.
my story.
Yeah.
It certainly isn't to this point. Yeah.
Okay. So fear is the thing that keeps most people from pursuing their childhood passions. Okay. Okay. And so now you have a podcast, right? You have a podcast. What was the biggest obstacle for you to get started with podcasting, and what's the current wall that you need to get over in order to consider your podcast a success by your own definition of success?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for me, I started off with this really, really grand vision of this super well produced program.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then I realized like that takes hours and hours and hours of work to pull something like that together. And so how many of those could I do? Like one a year? Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like it just got to the point where I was being overwhelmed by my own idea.
Yeah.
And the second thing that was really challenging was that I didn't want to put out a product that I didn't think was high quality, right? By my own standards, I didn't want to put out some kind of garbage, right?
Hmm.
And because I worked for Minnesota Public Radio, I had an opportunity to talk with one of the executive producers of one of their programs, and I was talking to him about the whole dream job equation as a podcast and what have you. And he said, "Well, just do it." And I was like, "Well, I don't want to." He's like, "Forget about all that. Just do it. Just it
Hmm.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it sounds terrible. It doesn't matter if your editing is bad. It doesn't matter. I don't care. Just do it." And so he kind of inspired me to just do it, and I did. And that got me started. And then I very quickly realized that if I'm going to do this and I'm going to be consistent, and if I'm going to really be able to pull off something that is of any value to anyone, then it has to be something that I can realistically do, right? So I've cut my podcast down to 3 to 7 minutes. Some of them are 8 or 9 minutes long. I don't have any guests. I don't have any sort of extra stuff. It's just a theme or a topic that has to do with being a better employee or being a good business owner, a good manager, or how to shift gears, how to change your mindset. Right now, this week, I started my blog. Today is about collaboration tools in a global marketplace, or how do you collaborate in today's environment. Those are the kinds of things that I try to talk about, and I give people, again, something that they can use, actionable items that they can use right away and put into their practice. So by keeping it simple, I'm able to have more impact, right? Now, success is also a very interesting measure, because I think most people would measure the success of the podcast based on the analytics of the podcast itself. And I think of the podcast really as one piece of a more holistic package. So I think if you listen to my podcast, if you read my blog, if you follow me on LinkedIn, then you'll get 60 to 70% of the information, right? I've written some books as well. They're available on Amazon. They're all $8. So they're again, very affordable. One is called Ben Passman's Resume Review. The second one is the Interview Guide. And the third one is really designed for after you landed a job, accepted an offer. It's called The Guide to Greatness, Your First 88 Days on the Job. And again, if you read the book, and I've made it very practical. It's not hard to read. It's very easy to follow. If you do this, you will get a job. It's almost that easy. And I know that it works because I've given the book to countless people and they have followed it and it's worked. I've done it for myself. It works. So if you want to do it yourself, you can do it that way. And of course, I offer some coaching options as well. So if people want to meet with me, we can do that. And it's all available on my website at dreamjobequation.com.
Dreamjobequation.com. Awesome. So the second half of that question was, what is your next wall in your podcast that they need to get over? Your next barrier?
Yeah. So you mean for me?
Yeah.
I think right now I'm on the journey of being consistent, right? I'm in that phase where I've identified the purpose of the podcast, how it relates and interacts with the other parts of my media content. And now I'm focused on consistency. So my blog is posted every Monday. My podcast comes out every Thursday. In between, I try to do something on social media that is related to the topic of the week. Each week is a theme. So I'm trying to get to a point where there's consistency in that messaging. And then the next hurdle will be to refine it, I think, to at this point, it's sort of a rough stone. And as I continue to evolve, I need to polish it. I need to get some of those burrs polished off and get it into more of a smooth stone. And so we'll see. I will give myself a year and a half. And, if 18 months from now, I'm still consistently every week doing it, then I'll feel like that's been a very good exercise. And then it'll be time to sort of implement the next thing.
Okay, I like that. Oh, I think we're on the same path. I have more of a medium to long term approach to this whole podcasting thing, and phase 0 was to get the damn thing started, and then stage 1 is like can you consistently, month after month, week after week, produce episodes? Don't worry too much about the editing, the quality. Just slowly build up a habit of having these free flowing conversations and having a lot of guests come in. And then it's not until year 2.5 that it's like, okay, now we need to implement some monetization strategies that are scalable, right?
Yeah.
And moving on from there. But okay, good. So two questions. Well, I guess one question that is targeted to two different type of people. Entering the workforce, right? For someone that's about to finish high school, right? Or that just finished high school, and they're thinking about starting a career, and or someone like me, right? I'm 30 and a half, don't have a career, right? And you're starting to figure out, okay, man, like, what do I really need a career? So in my case, I just decided, well, I'm going to start a business. I'm gonna put my best foot forward. I'm gonna put in all I got, all in or nothing, and just try to make this work. That can be seen as a career, I suppose. But how do you approach this whole career thing, professional world thing? It just seems like too big of a dragon to tackle, so to speak. And so
Yeah.
that 18, 19-year-old kid that his resume is barely filled up, and she maybe just has like one job or two jobs, and college is not necessarily something that they want to pursue. But that's not necessarily like tackle secondary tertiary education, but just how does a young person approach career, building their career, and how does someone in their, I'm not middle ages, but like what do you call me, like 30, like whatever that is, like like whatever this phase is, how do we approach entering the career, the professional world as a career?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting approach. It's an interesting question. I'll answer it by a similar answer for both, actually.
Okay. Okay.
Um, there's a movie on Amazon Prime. It's called A Million Miles Away. It's a true story. It's based on this guy's life. He was a young child, son of migrant farmers that came from Mexico to California to work the fields, and he went to school while his parents were working. And in, I don't know, second, third grade, something like that, maybe it was a little older, fourth or fifth grade, I'm not sure. The teacher asked the class to write down, what do you want to be when you grow up? This little migrant farmer kid said, I want to be an astronaut. Well, the whole movie is about his journey to becoming an astronaut. And he had to learn Russian. He had to get a PhD. He had to be in the physical fitness of like Hercules. Like, I mean, like this guy had to do things that most people would never do, never even decide to take the step toward. Like, if you found out that the job that you were most interested in required you to learn Russian, I mean, like,
Right.
really? Like,
Right. Yeah.
that's a hard, that's a major barrier, right? So I don't know where everybody started and where everybody's trying to finish, but in my own life, I did not start anywhere close to migrant farmer, right? My parents owned a house. So I know that I started way, way in advance of migrant farmer. And I also know that my wildest dreams are nowhere close to astronaut, right? So if this kid can make it from migrant farmer to space, then I certainly can make it from the city of Chicago to wherever the hell I'm trying to go, right? I mean, like, it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
far. It's attainable. You can do it. I have a friend, the guy I've known for 25, almost 30 years now. Excuse me. And we had a similar conversation about, you can do anything you put your mind to. And he was like, yeah, you're probably right. And he decided that he was going to teach himself how to play banjo. Of all the instruments, right? He didn't pick up a
Okay.
guitar. He didn't
Yeah.
get a keyboard. No, he's going to try and play banjo. Okay, great. He did. He bought a banjo. He watched a lot of YouTube videos. He took some lessons. He basically learned how to play the banjo. And now, I mean, is he going to be like a rock star? No, but he knows how to play the banjo better than I know how to play anything,
Right.
right? And so you can truly do whatever you put your mind to. You just have to be intentional about it, and you have to stay focused, and you have to really want it. And if you don't really want it, then something else is going to happen, right?
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. It's sort of, you'll know what your priority is if you're willing to put some energy towards it.
So speaking of putting energy into it, let's touch on the efforts or lack of effort that goes into really perfecting your resume. So most of us haven't looked at our resume in a minute, and or for those of us that are looking at it too often, we're not we're not making significant changes to it to make ourselves be more appealing. So from a recruiter's side of this story, because some of us might look at a recruiter as the gatekeepers, so to speak, right? Like the bad guys, instead of the person that you need to be on the same page with in order to align you with the right job. So I guess the question here is like, what are some of the best practices as far as one, creating your resume, and then two, approaching recruiters in a way that puts you and the recruiter on the same team, so to speak.
Yeah, it's again a great question. A lot of the stuff I address in my book, so I don't want to give it all away. But
Okay.
I will
Okay.
say that for recruiters, it's one of these things where when you're in the weeds, like if I had 20 job openings that I'm trying to fill and I got 50 applicants to each job, right? All of a sudden I'm overwhelmed, right? I got way too many resumes to look at. I got
Right.
too many things to read, right? That kind of thing. So for me as a recruiter, I always sort of gravitated towards the resumes that were easy to read, right? If your resume is all full of fluffy stuff and graphics and lines and columns and it's hard to
Mm,
read,
mm,
it's just hard. Like, don't make it hard for me, make it easy for me, right?
yeah.
The other thing I think is people forget that we live in a digital world. And
Mm,
so the old construct of keeping your resume to one page or 2 pages or something like that is old
mm,
fashioned. That's no longer the reality, right? The reality is you upload your resume into a system, the system parses out each job into a field, and then it
yeah.
asks you to manually type in the stuff that the computer didn't know. And then a recruiter gets a sheet with your resume attached, right? And so
Mm,
again, a digital thing, like nobody prints anything anymore either, right? So this whole
yeah.
idea of paper and pages is kind of a waste. And
Mm,
so there's a lot of tactical things, just some basic things that you can do to your resume to make it more impactful. I think the again, years ago, people used to say, "Oh, well, you should write your resume and put it on colorful paper because then it'll stand out," right? And that kind of
right.
thing.
Right.
And then there was a period of time not so long ago when they said, "Oh, well, you should fill your resume with keywords because the computers are looking for keywords." Well, the computer is smarter than that now. And so now the only way to really truly differentiate yourself from the other people looking for that same job is through your content, right? If you can't tell your story in your resume, then
Mm,
you're probably going to lose, right? You're not going to be able to convey what you're passionate about, what you're interested in, all of that kind of that kind of information is important. The other thing I think that people mess around, that not mess around, but that they sort of mess up in their mind is that we get, for whatever reason, we get emotionally attached to our resumes, right? We think that
mm,
everything we've ever done in our lives, we need to put on our resume. And, it's not like any other document you've ever written. Like if you've written a paper for school
mm,
or whatever, a 10-page paper, okay, read the book, wrote a paper, turned it in. Who cares, right?
right.
At the end of
Right.
the day, you got an A or an F or whatever. You graduated school, right? So you're done. But our resume, for whatever reason, is like this sacred document that
Mm,
we feel
mm,
like our soul is somehow emblazoned on this page, right? And the reality is that it's not. Your resume is nothing more than a marketing tool, right? It's trying to be the thing that's going to penetrate into an organization so that you'll get noticed, so that somebody will invite you for an interview. That's what your resume is. And so I tell people all the time, it's not that you don't want to be proud of that work. There's lots of things I've done in my life that I'm proud of. I don't necessarily have to tell my future employer about it, right?
Right.
So, for example, this is a very basic thing, but for example, as a recruiter, a lot of my daily routine was data entry, right? You're going to enter a lot of information into systems all the time. Not my favorite thing to do. I don't
Right.
really
Right.
love data entry, right? I'm capable of it and it's fine. It's a part of the job, but it's not like the thing that I'm going to sell. In my resume, I don't mention data entry once, not a single time, because it's sort of one of those things like, first of all, I'm not interested in a job that's going to list one of the requirements is massive amounts of data entry. I'm probably not going to apply to that job, right? And so if I find that I take a job that requires some data entry, okay, I get it. That's part of the job, but that's not what I'm going for, right? And I think that if you strip out the things that are irrelevant to the job that you want, then your resume will be stronger, right? So put that a different way. Your resume should only include the information that's relevant to the job that you're looking for based on the experience that you have. So you don't want to make stuff up, but
Yeah. Yeah.
you can take out the things like, if you're one of these people that has like your personal hobbies listed on your resume, take it off. Like nobody cares that you like to swim in the lake. You know what I mean? So just take it
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
It's not relevant to what you want to do, right? I see people all the time in software development, financial services. I don't know. There's probably some other industries, but those two in particular where people just list the entire alphabet, like everything you could possibly do. And it's like, so which of these things do you want to do? Right. And, for example, a software developer, there's a lot of different kinds of software developers. You could be working on apps. You could be working on native systems. You could be working on SaaS. You could be working on mainframes. Like there's so many different kinds of things. So if your resume says, "Oh, I can do all that stuff," well, then future employers are probably going to say, "Yeah, maybe you can do a little bit of all those things, but probably none of it any good," right? And it's sort of the jack of all trades, right? You become a master of none, and so your resume needs to reflect where you're going, not necessarily where you've been.
And the second half of that question was, how does the average individual get on the good side of the recruiter?
Yeah, so it's just the opposite of all that stuff I just said, right? So make your resume really easy to read,
Okay.
make it relevant. If you can qualify the work and quantify the impact, and people, I think, lose sight of what that means. Like quantify the impact can be the impact on the end user, the impact on your team, the impact on the business, the impact on society. You can have impact on a lot of different things. And you can measure that impact in a lot of different ways. So you can use percentage, dollars, you can use ratios, you can use speed, time, volume, distance, right? All these things. There's a lot of different ways to measure things. And so if you can tell the recruiter, this is the work that I've done, and this is the impact that it had, then a recruiter is going to most likely move your resume on to the manager, because they're going to be able to very quickly be able to see that you not only understand how to do your job, but you have an understanding of the greater picture of what's going on around you, right? And that, I think, is really important. It's being able to tell your story concisely. Recruiters don't spend any time at all, like 2 seconds, maybe 5 at the most, reviewing resumes before they decide accept or reject. I did an episode about it, and I talk about it all the time. The job search is a lot like online dating, and your resume is kind of like your profile, right? In your profile, if you were an online dating, I don't know if you've ever done it or not, but I think we all are familiar with how it works, right? You put your best pictures up, you write a profile statement, tell everybody about yourself, right? Now, if you just got out of jail, you're not going to say, "Oh, I just got out of jail." You're not going to put that
Right.
in your profile, right? Because you're
Mm,
not going
mm,
back to jail, right? You're only talking about where you're going forward. And so
yeah.
it's the same kind of thing, right? You're not going to talk about, "Oh, yeah, I got fired from this company. Well, let me tell you all about that." They're not going to put that on your
Mm, mm,
resume, right? So it's the same kind of idea. And just as quickly as you might swipe right or left, so do recruiters. Recruiters are delete or accept very quickly. It happens so fast that every once in a while you have to go back through all the ones you rejected to say, did I
yeah.
reject too many? Like, is there somebody in there I
Mm,
should have looked at? Right.
yeah.
And it happens so often. So it's about simplicity. It's about keeping it, again, visually easy, digitally easy. And if you can express your impact, then that will get you to the next level.
Awesome, awesome, Ben. We're at the top of the hour already. Just it flew by so fast. Um,
It always does.
yeah. Any final words here for people that are trying to, let's try to talk to that person that hasn't even entertained the idea of doing the very thing that they always dreamed to do when they were little, and they're now in their, let's say, mid 40s and up. And the idea of switching or pursuing that the childhood dream is just is too daunting. What do you have to say to them? Like, what's step zero in this equation for them?
Well, step zero is just simply get over yourself. It's never too late to redefine and land your dream job. You will probably have to redefine it, and then you'll have to take several steps to get there, right? If you're 40, it took you 40 years to get here. So it's not going to unwind tomorrow. It's going to take some time. You're going to take 3, 5, 10, 15 years to unwind. But if you don't start today, then it's not going to happen, right? I mean, if you start today, it happens 15 years from now. If you start tomorrow, it happens 15 years from tomorrow. Life is short, and the things that are really important, the things that really matter most, are the things that you should put at the front of your life and sort of your pursuit of whatever you define as happiness. And for each of us, it's a little bit different, but the experience is the same. When you find the thing that you really love and you're doing work that you're good at, it becomes really easy to do the work, and it becomes a lot of fun, and opportunities that you didn't expect become open and available. And before you know it, you've dragged yourself out of some level of misery, and now you have some new level of happiness. And I speak from experience, and I speak through knowledge of other people who have done very much the same thing and have had a very wonderful experience as a result. So I would encourage anybody who's interested, certainly listen to my podcast, follow me on LinkedIn, read the blog. All that's free. If you want, you can register for a free resume review. I'll spend 25 minutes with anybody who asks. Just go onto the website and register there. My calendar's up to date. So I'll spend 25 minutes with you, just kind of giving you some specific details about your individual resume. And then beyond that, if you're interested in, pursuing a longer term relationship, of course, I have coaching and other options available. So it's all available at dreamjobequation.com. So I appreciate the opportunity to help.
Dreamjobequation.com. Ben, thank you so much for coming to the Moses Kabandana Podcast. It's been a pleasure having you here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.